Welcome to AMN's Women at the Wheel podcast. In this all-new series, Amy Antonora, Nadine Bata, and myself, Mary Delavala, will sit down with some of today's leading women professionals in the automotive aftermarket who are pursuing their careers with passion and helping shape the future of our industry.
Welcome back to the new AMN Women at the Wheel podcast. I'm Amy Antonora, and joining me today is 2021 Women at the Wheel honoree Meagan Moody, Head of Customer Strategy and Marketing North America, Aftermarket for ZF Group. Welcome, Meagan.
Well, thank you,
So glad
Amy.
to have you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here today.
Yeah, so you have a very impressive new title, which is a recent promotion for you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
It is, and the title sometimes, right, doesn't even go necessarily with what's under it, right? But it is a new role for me as of January. It's something I have found to be even more excited about than I realized going into it. But really what it includes is customers and strategy for aftermarket for the region. So Canada all the way down through Panama. And it's focused on, of course, the overall regional strategy for our aftermarket division, but then also includes our departments of digital markets, so e-commerce, really focused on connecting more into the consumer that way. And then really how that connects into marketing and workshop loyalty and, loyalty and reward programs. Mm-hmm. So it's got e-com, marketing, loyalty programs, strategy. So there's a big team now that is working together in an integrated approach to make sure we're doing what our customers need.
Very cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. And I imagine, too, you really have to dive deep into those different regions, too, to study and understand the differences in those customers in the different markets. That must be very interesting.
Yeah, the biggest, for me, I'm glad that I have a really strong established team in Mexico already because, not only are they teaching me a lot, but also while I'm learning, I can, really be comfortable in the fact that they are continuing to do what they've always done, which is connect into the customer and make sure, we're doing what needs to be done for the brands, for the products, for really the market as a whole. Yeah. So I keep learning and they keep doing, and we just integrate more and more as we go along.
Very cool. So what do you like best about your current role?
I really enjoy the strategy side much more than I thought I was going to. I have been marketing my entire professional career, and of course, I really dug in a few years ago back into kind of the integrated marketing approach, that 360 view, and that includes a lot more strategy. I just didn't think I was going to enjoy the strategy outside of marketing, getting into perhaps new business or new products or, really, are we going to have flying cars in the future? I didn't realize I was going to enjoy that part of the strategy as much as I do. And so it's been great to work with our head of region, Ben Smart, and dig into where can we bring ZF Aftermarket in North America for the future. Mm-hmm. And so that's been the part I've enjoyed quite a bit.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. I think it's always neat that sometimes you have to jump into a new role or a new skill set, and that hesitance that you have, in hindsight, you end up realizing how much you grow and enjoy the learning and the growth process. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you stretch yourself, you get so many benefits from it.
You do.
Have you found that to be true?
Completely. It's one of those things where, how many times have we all kind of ended up working an insane amount of extra hours and, kind of been griping about it. But right now, I am doing those hours, but I'm loving it. It's the hours I'm putting in at night to learn to kind of almost like structure myself differently. Mm-hmm. And, to go from, a smaller team before to a much larger team now, it's so, honestly, I'm having fun geeking out on all of the organization pieces to bring it all together. But I am. It's helped me grow a lot and look at things from different perspectives and dig in and learn on things that I wasn't necessarily up to speed on before.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I think it's important to have the attitude of wanting to be a lifelong learner, and it sounds like you certainly are. So what would you say has been, you're a young, beautiful lady, but what would you say has been your proudest moment in your career thus far? I know you have a lot more career to go, but What are you most proud of right now?
Yeah, that question's always the toughest for me to answer. I always give it some thought, and I think there's kind of two sides to it. One, there's the personal side of it. I did not think I'd be in a position at this level this early in my career. So there's kind of that self-proud aspect of it. But then for me, and the industry as a whole, right, it's the people side and what that aspect is. And for me, there's a few key friends that I've really seen grow and change, similar, right? Like going from a smaller job into a much bigger promotions, that I've been able to kind of, speak to and been their advocate to kind of, get them excited about aspects, but also get other people excited about them. And that part I've really enjoyed as well, to see them then get into higher roles as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I want to go back to something you just said that I find intriguing. You said, I didn't think that I would be in this big of a role this early in my career. So
yeah,
that's interesting. Let's talk about that for a second. Is it because, and not that you have this, but a lot of times, especially women in male-dominated industry like this, sometimes we have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
We think we don't have the qualifications, and so we don't take the leap. Did you take the leap, or did you have someone kind of nudging you along and telling you were ready?
I've always kind of, gotten to a point where, like you're saying, lifetime learner, and where I will recognize I'm getting stagnant and then I need to do something different. At one point it was going back to get my master's. I needed to learn more or learn in a different way. And so I've always pushed and been very vocal about where I want to get, but kind of where I went from a year ago to where I am now, it kind of like jumped a couple steps. And took on a lot of different topics versus kind of just perhaps one or two at a time. And going, yes, trust me, the imposter syndrome has played in, especially taking on a role like this, because there was so much learning to do. I knew I was taking on a role I needed to learn more. But it also goes back to, honestly, I got a degree in marketing. I went to school for marketing. And if you look really just coming out of college, you think, well, a top role in marketing is CMO. Okay, if you hit CMO, you figure, all right, that's what you want for the last 10 years of your career or something like that, right? And I, didn't see kind of these other routes that would bring in essence, that CMO role within a division. And so you think you kind of just take it more natural progression throughout things. And I never wanted to be the one that like owned the company or ran the company. So for me, coming out of college, that CMO level was really the top level I wanted to get to. And kind of just bringing that in a little bit earlier than I thought I would. So I don't know. That's kind of how that hit me.
That's neat. That's interesting. You're clearly, obviously, a very goal-oriented person, and I'm sure that helps quite a bit. So what's your next goal for yourself then, would you say?
I don't know yet. I had a friend of mine ask me that. He's like, okay, well, you got here earlier than what you thought. So then what does your plan look like now? But there's so much I'm loving and diving into this, and there's really significant learning I know I can do in this role for the next 3 years, without question. And especially with the categories that fall in, digital market, overall strategy, changing markets. Honestly, where we are now, when you and I talk in a year from now, there's going to be completely new business pieces that are part of the aftermarket that are not now.
Yeah.
And so I feel like right now I'm in a role that will allow me to learn significant amounts over the next 5 years, that really, this is my 5-year plan right now, to learn, to be ready for even more changes in our industry. What happens after that? I'm not sure. Maybe it ends up one of the consultant routes. Maybe it ends up in an independent marketing agency. Maybe I continue to love it as much as I am right now, and it's my job for the next 15 and I can retire early.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the goal, right?
You never know.
That's my goal, is to retire early.
That sounds nice. So in your 2021 Women at the Wheel interview, you had mentioned that you felt like for a newcomer, the aftermarket can be kind of intimidating to navigate. So what advice would you give to a newcomer, particularly a young woman, to get over that fear and to jump in feet first?
Yeah, I will say for any newcomer now, even women, coming into the industry now versus 11 years ago when I did, is a completely different industry. I mean, I remember easily going to the Apex opening reception and maybe 10% women, maybe, and now we look at it and it's getting pretty close even. And so overall, right, that I think changes the dynamic.
Sure.
But for me, when I thought the intimidation factor, it was actually more so how close-knit our industry is.
Yeah.
It's everyone knows everyone. So if you're coming in brand new and you don't have connections, and let's say you get to an event where you haven't really even built up kind of your network really within your company so much, I mean, you are coming in and you feel like such an outsider because it's a family you're coming. It's like marrying into a family, right?
That's very true.
You've got to get to know everybody. But, really the advice comes down to, and I think I've heard so many people say it, just say hi, just introduce yourself. I have never seen anyone completely refute somebody entering into a conversation. And, I was lucky enough to at least have made a couple connections before going to some of my first industry events. But it's still intimidating to walk into a room and know everyone's already chatting.
Right.
Well, how does everyone know each other?
Yeah.
But so it's a little, I think it's a little less intimidating now as a woman specifically, right? Because there at least is more women within the room. But my advice is, honestly, no one's gonna ignore you.
It's true.
It's just say hi, and that itself is intimidating, but it's worth it.
And once you're in, you're in.
You're in. You're good. You're in.
You'll be a lifer before you know it.
You're stuck. Right? Welcome to the industry.
So you also mentioned in your Women at the Wheel interview how important you think mentorship is. What have been some of the benefits for you, both as a mentor and a mentee?
From a mentee perspective, I think for one, it keeps you involved. It keeps you interested. It also gives you kind of that sense of ownership to the projects you are also working on at a company or in the industry. And for me, mine happened kind of naturally from actually who was my boss at the time, us kind of learning how to work together, because we ended up finding out that in essence, we really are really similar. And he had never managed anyone that was a version of him. And, vice versa.
Who was this?
Mark Callie.
Okay.
So, but, you get through that. And, now for 11 years, he's been there every step of my journey. And I've been able to count on him for both a personal and a professional standpoint. And I think, there's always that route of, is it a formal mentorship or is it casual, and which way it goes? And I've seen them successful in both routes, but I think they're essential to have. And because your professional life, in a lot of ways, you spend more hours at it than you do in your personal.
Yes.
And I think it's important to have somebody that understands both sides of it and is honestly truly has your back. And they're there to speak of you and when you're not around. And those aspects, having a mentor that will do that is what helps you also honestly progress in your career. Because when others aren't as familiar with you and perhaps your quality of work or really you as a person, they're there to speak of you.
Right.
And then from a mentor perspective, right? I mean, when you're able to connect with a mentor as a mentee like that, you want that. You want to be able to kind of do that as a give back and find somebody that's as excited as you were at one stage to find that connection. and there's been, I'm involved with Yang now. I sit on the Yang Council there. And so, I'm edging towards the age out for Yang. And, seeing a lot of new members in the industry, they're at the bottom edge of the Yang, and they're from a mindset perspective, right? We're definitely at different points in our lives, but it's really fun now to be at the age I am to then connect with people that are in, 24, 25, because that's where I was when I came into the industry. Yeah. And so I know what they're going through, and, I know what value those kind of connections can bring.
And I think you get sort of, like you were talking about before, a renewed sense of enthusiasm when you're feeding off of this other person and what they're excited. Like you talking about your new role and how you're enjoying digging in. Like I can feel that, and I think that's a huge part of those relationships.
Yeah, I think so. I think it, it reignites your passion. Yeah. This industry is something that I don't think anyone can deny I'm passionate about. And, but we all get stagnant at times. We all, and I think those kind of touch points is what kind of renews us and gets our energy going again.
For sure, I agree. So as we wrap up this conversation, what would you say are the key skill sets that you need to have, sort of like the foundation for success in the aftermarket?
Oh, geez. For me, I think one of the things that I think has helped my skill sets would be some of the volunteer positions I've done in the industry, through Auto Care or through AASA, through Yang, through ACC. There's so many associations involved, and I'm not saying that those volunteer roles necessarily are what are going to propel your career, but I think what you learn by volunteering as part, right? It's kind of like when you're in high school. I mean, when you're applying to college, they want to see what your volunteer experience is, and that's because there's value there in being a, voluntary leader that is going to benefit you when you're taking on those higher level classes. And I think for those, I'm really happy I got involved very early. Actually there was a couple of other women at the wheel that were some of the first people I met that that connection and what you learn during those volunteer aspects of fine-tuning your skill sets, working with people that are at different companies and therefore have different focuses, but you have to kind of come together on projects. I think that really helps fine-tune the skills that you need in order to succeed.
That's a great point. Excellent. Okay, well, this has been a really enjoyable conversation. Thank you so much for making time for us today, and best of luck on the next chapter in your career.
Well, thank you, Amy. I really enjoyed being here today.
Yeah, same. Thanks, Meagan.
Thank you.